So today we're going to talk about workflow secrets of seven-figure firms, a topic that I think is really timely as firms start growing, businesses start growing, and then you can really run into challenges from a workflow standpoint. So we're excited about that conversation. We're excited to have you guys with us today. So let me cover a few administrative items that we have today. So today is a 50-minute session. As part of that, we do have poll questions, and we need to have people answering all those poll questions. So if you do that, then you will automatically get credit for the CPE session. That will be sent out automatically. So certificates will go out, as will the replay of today, and then also transcript information. So you will get all that. We have a question function as part of today's session, so that is the best way to interact with us and the speakers. We'll be watching those during the session and answer as many of those during today's session as we can. So we really encourage that. Our most recent webinars, people use those really extensively, and that was a really valuable thing that we had. So my name is Tom Wadelton. I'm the facilitator for today's session. I work for Summit CPA Group. Really enjoy doing these learning sessions. I'm active with the Indiana CPA Society as a past board chair, and then also I'm joining the Board of Governors for the AICPA. And a continued conversation always in that is continuing education. How do we continue moving forward? And it relates very much to the topic that we have today. So I'm really happy people are here. Our other speakers, we have Jamie Naw, who is the Director of Accounting for Summit CPA Group. And Jamie is an active user of Jetpack and reinforces it within our firm. Adam Hale also watches over the company as Chief Operating Officer and one of the co-founders, also making sure that all of our workflow is in place and that we're as efficient and can grow effectively as a company. And then David is with Jetpack, founder of the company, and he'll be giving us a lot of good information about how workflow works and the entire product suite and how you should be thinking of workflow. So a little bit about Summit CPA Group. So since 2003, the company has provided virtual CFO services. We became a distributed firm several years ago, offering so employees can work remotely. I know everyone is doing that currently, but that was how we had started, which gave us that flexibility of wherever employees worked, wherever our clients were, that we could service them. So we've been a fully distributed firm since that time. So David, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you to go through your slides.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. Well, I'm really excited. Thanks so much for hosting us. The goal of today is to really talk about, scaling your firm. And by the way, everybody should see my screen here. There should be a slide up that says scaling your firm overview. If not, type in the questions box. Let us know if anything's going sideways with the presentation. But I want to cover a couple things. The first one is we're going to talk about the S.A.T method that can really help reduce things like new client onboarding, employee onboarding by as much as 60%. As we go through this acronym, you're going to see there's actually a lot more power even outside of just onboarding and thinking in this way. If we have time, we're going to go through how firms like Summit CPA are tracking thousands of clients without missing a deadline. We'll cover a profit boost, we call it, feature that one owner used to increase profit by over 20%. Now, here's the good news. Some people on here might not be using Jetpack Workflow. Doesn't matter. You can actually take the methodology we're going to talk about here and apply it to just about anything you use. Time permitting, we'll open up the application towards the end to just do a high-level overview. Most of today's content is really in the structure for scaling your firm. And finally, throughout today's presentation, there'll be questions. We're going to give away free templates. We'll talk about the software a little bit and so much more. But if you have questions, if you have comments, drop them into the question box. A couple quick things about Jetpack Workflow. So we serve 1,600 plus firms in 18 plus countries. We track a lot of work inside of our application. We're taking a look at what's getting done on time, what isn't getting done on time. And we typically work with more accounting firms worldwide than the typical software application. You already saw my face, you already saw my screen, so I at least have half a body here on the internet. But in addition to running Jetpack Workflow, we also run the Growing Your Firm podcast. Summit has been on at least 3 times between Jody and Adam. We're also co-authors of a best-selling book called Double Your Accounting Firm, where we took the best practices from the industry and put it into about 200 pages of best practices. In addition to that, we're actually based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We have one team member in Brazil, but the majority of us are in Pittsburgh. So if you ever are looking to attend a Steelers game, let us know. We'll be in town. All right, so having said that, let's dive in. And the first thing we're going to talk about is kind of the symptoms you might be experiencing as you're growing your firm, as you're scaling your firm. And I always like to start with this concept of bottlenecks, because you kind of look at this classic, Coca-Cola-esque looking bottle here at the bottom. And I think it's very illustrative of what goes on in most firms, which is the bottleneck, the chokehold of the bottle is at the top. So typically we see that the reason firms aren't growing, here's the good news and the bad news, is because of the owner or the partner. There's something that is restricting the firm from breathing a little bit more and growing. And we're going to talk about that and how to overcome that here in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about some of the symptoms you might be feeling as you're scaling up. So here's the first one, right? So let me know if this is you. So at random parts of the day or night, you might have a mini freak out moment where you vaguely feel like you might have missed something important for your team or for your clients. We've had firm owners tell us they call it the oh craps. They shoot out 2 a.m. Wednesday night. Oh crap! Write it down on a post-it note. Check in with a team member. Shoot an email off to a client. All right. So that's one symptom. The second one is the service quality is declining. We talk with so many firm owners, and the reason they start their practice is because they know in their heart that they can deliver a higher level of quality to their clients. As they grow, the turnaround time, the responsiveness starts to suffer. And the final one I'll mention is when you hire somebody, we're all excited. Oh my gosh, I finally get to have some help. People are coming on board. But then you find yourself, instead of working 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week, you're spending an additional 20 hours a week coaching, mentoring, checking in, doing reviews, doing QA, helping them understand how to process certain services. And all of a sudden, it just feels like you now have a job and a half as more team members come in. So go ahead and type into the question box right now. Let me know if any of those resonate with you and where your firm is currently at today. All right, and I won't read anybody's name, but I will take a look to see if I could see anybody. Right now, I'm seeing everybody guessing about Tom and what instrument he's playing, which I love. Do any of these symptoms really resonate with you, right? Are you having mini freakouts? Are you having challenges scaling your team? Is service quality declining, right? Where do you really see yourself? Somebody just said, the first one, right? Having mini freakouts, in their firm, right? Somebody else, let's see. We have a team management, I think, is coming in, right? What else? And the reason I like to pause here is because, we see this every single day. And I should have made this note, it's a fairly collaborative, interactive webinar, right? So I'm going to keep prodding you to participate. But, the reason we talk about this is because you're not alone. This is very, very common. There's nothing abnormal about you or your firm. These are just the next evolution of your firm and where it needs to go. And we hope that some of the frameworks today help you out and help you overcome some of these hurdles. Well, that actually leads us. So I saw some people commenting, some of the challenges they had. Somebody said the mini freak out. Somebody said scaling a team, right? And so the point I was just trying to make is I think it's important to recognize that these are symptoms of growth. These are good problems, but they're still problems. And some of the frameworks today can help you maybe ask better questions of your firm and even kind of navigate these uncharted waters for your firm. But having said that, I know we want to make sure everybody gets their CPE today. So let's go ahead and pop open the first question for today.
Okay, that's up on the screen now. So if you'll go ahead and answer that first poll question. Okay, just take a minute or two if you just want to continue with your comments, David, and then I'll close it when we're ready.
Okay, great. And to confirm, they cannot see my screen now at this time.
That's right. They see the poll question.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to take a look at what are the other questions that came in. Somebody said service quality declining. Absolutely. Want to be able to track statuses better. I would say that's, I don't know if that's for you individually or for you or the team, but I think there's a huge level of transparency as you grow. Adam, Jamie, if you want to talk about that, your impetus behind looking at something like Jetpack Workflow, I think, had something to do with transparency and team management as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it definitely did. No, there was part of it had to do with growth, like mentioned there before. I mean, I think once we got to a certain size, it became to the point where it was harder to process manage through some of the free tools out there, and it was harder for me as a director to know exactly what was going on in all those tools. And with Jetpack, I can actually have a little more visibility. So that was definitely part of it. Was the as we grew, but it was also, you know, we wanted to create the transparency and the consistency among all of our clients.
Yeah. Do you recall what size was the firm at the time? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say half of our attendees today are with firms that are 1 to 5 people. So as you talk growth, a lot of opportunity for growth for firms. Seems like a perfect time as they're moving past that.
Yeah. And Jamie, just to put a bookend on it, do you recall the firm size when you started experiencing those problems?
Yeah, so we've signed up with you right around 35. I think we probably experienced the problems earlier than that, but obviously it takes a while to come to the right conclusion. So it was probably right around 30 where we started to see, you know, I'd get a client call and I'd start to hear what the service we were providing them. And I'm like, wow, that's not what we do at all. You know, and so I'd have to like think back on that and be like, okay, how are we going to make our product a little more consistent?
Yeah, I would say the problem starts at about 3 people. So, you know, the reality is like we were using Trello and everybody does their own thing and it's cool for a little bit, but the second you have to delegate something to someone, so once you step out of being, you know, A to Z for that client, the reality is that you need something a little bit more consistent. And Trello was a great tool. We could type in a ton of information. People really liked the way that it flowed. The problem is the consistency that Jamie mentioned. You'd hop into one person and it was like breadcrumbs everywhere and it was awesome. Somebody else had like 3 things in there and that was it. And then Jamie couldn't oversee the whole process really well, which, you know, everybody's individual cards and stuff. So there was just not a whole lot of consistency there. So we definitely needed it way before we got it, for sure.
Yeah, and even for the folks here, you know, so 21% are they're maybe not the owner of the firm, maybe they're not even with a firm, but I think this, you know, also applies to as you're managing a team, as you're building out a team, right? So I think whether you're running a firm, a partner of the firm, or you're currently managing a team, or that's a career aspiration to manage a couple people, you're going to experience some of these challenges one way or another. Cool. All right, so we'll dive back in too. Thanks everybody for the answers there. And so I think, you know, what critical mindset shift that we've seen, and Summit's talked about it, has done an amazing job with this, but we've seen with firms that really start to break through, it really does start with mindset. It really does start with looking at your firm fundamentally different than when you started. You know, when you started, it was all about whatever it takes to survive. I'm going to say yes to everything. I want to make sure I can pay, you know, my mortgage or my cost of living or whatever it is. And now the next stage where you're at, whether you're trying to break through a few dozen employees or your first 3, I think it's really important to start thinking about your service as your product, right? You could still call it a service to the market, but the mindset shift is I'm delivering a product to the market. And really your workflow determines your product quality. You know, and as you start thinking about whether it's tax returns or bookkeeping, CFO, advisory services, you know, there are specific steps you need to take to deliver that outcome, whether it's compliance, whether it's peace of mind, whether it's cash flow forecasting or strategic financial advice. There are a set of steps that are required to deliver a really delightful experience for the client. And when you start thinking about this product aspect, you'll start to realize that every time you have an issue with the product, right? Maybe you're not getting something out on time, a client calls up upset, team members uncertain what to do. You can go back and say, okay, we're suffering from quality. Let's break down the workflow. Let's break down the steps. Let's see where the bottleneck is. Let's see where the information's missing. Let's see where the client is confused and start building it up from there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once you really think about yourself as a firm that delivers a product, I think it's really important to think about, you know, what kind of experience do you want to deliver, right? You get to pick and choose as you grow. Now that you have a little bit of, you know, peace of mind that, hey, I have a firm here. It's going to be around. It's going to survive. I feel really good about it. What kind of experience do you want to deliver? And there's typically 3 experiences we kind of see out in the marketplace. today, and we'll talk about which ones are the most popular. But the first one is really the Toyota kind of experience. This is the firm that says, for any person, anywhere, anytime, any place, I'll get it done for you, right? This is kind of like A to Z, reliable. You can't charge a lot of money for these types of services, right? You're kind of competing on cost. You're kind of competing against H&R Block, big tax firms. This is for the every person kind of experience. And this is, obviously really challenging, but it gives you a big market to go after, but you are competing on price and you are competing on kind of margins. The second experience, what we see a lot of firms evolve into, they might start as Toyota. Like I said, you pay the bills, you need to meet payroll. So if somebody comes in the door, they're going to give you money to do something you know how to do, you're going to say yes. But eventually you want to start specializing, right? And we call this moving into kind of the BMW offer. And what this typically looks like is focusing on business owner, which I know someone has a lot of experience in. And typically what we see is you either niche in an industry or in a geography. So what do I mean by that? Well, we've talked with firms that say, well, we're just going to focus on dental practices or creative agencies or SaaS businesses. And we're going to deliver a broad range of services for that type of business, right? So that's one avenue. The other one is to, like I said, geography, which is we're going to serve every business within a 15-mile radius of the beautiful city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're going to learn all about the laws and regulations, the tax and innovation credits that go on in the state. We're going to understand funding opportunities that are within the county or within the state, and we're really going to focus on that. And that's where we really start to see firms start to break away and gain a lot of margins and profit and actually satisfaction in their business, I'll say, because they really start to niche down, hey, we love working with these types of clients, right? And we really start to see folks take off from there. Now, there is a third level, right? And I would argue, I don't know if Jamie and Adam would agree, that, this is where Summit's at. They kind of play at the Ferrari level, right? They go after maybe a certain size business. It has a certain income stream. They go after kind of the quote unquote affluent marketplace. They go deep in the business. They fully understand the business. They become strategic partners with the business. They come in, they meet weekly, meet bi-weekly, meet with the management team, right? This is clearly kind of a Ferrari experience, right? High margins, very select, amazing business. You could also do this with individuals. We've talked with firm owners that said, look, we're going to specialize in tax planning for retired executives in the state of Texas. Okay, and they charge a lot for it too. So it's very selective. And they actually jettisoned their kind of BMW business. And I think the beautiful opportunity everybody here has today is you get to pick. You get to say where you want to kind of play and the kind of the makeup that you want to have. Now, this wasn't, planned, but I'll say, Jamie and Adam, is that fair to say that you would probably sit, certainly from, what the fees you're able to command, kind of in the Ferrari experience, not to say you don't have business owner clients that maybe don't pay you as much, but would you say you're in that kind of third bucket?
Yeah, we try to be, for sure. And yeah, I think that I think that's where we all kind of want to be too. So,
Adam, I'll ask you this question that Kathleen put on here. So she says she feels like their product is a commodity, and the only thing that's different is client experience. But I've heard you talk about elements of our service that are commodities, but there are parts that really differentiate us if you think of us as a product. You mind expanding on how you talk about our different offerings?
Yeah, I think that it's really easy to commoditize tax services, but there's a way to supplement that makes you different, whenever it comes to tax planning and projections. So making sure that you're, to that end, I agree with her, like the user experience. So it's how we set up the delivery that makes the same product a little bit more unique and more valuable. Same way whenever we're delivering VCFO services, everything's kind of centered around financial forecasting. Sure, paying bills can be a bit of a commodity, but it's permission to play that everything's in good order in order for us to do those higher level services. So there's a reason why we do those, but that's not what our focal point is. So we really try to focus on, hey, these are the differentiators, and we do try to productize our service in a way that's repeatable and deliverable. So yeah, I agree that, the experience is a little bit different, but you can make that experience repeatable in a process. That's the only piece I'd spin on there.
Perfect.
No, I think
Thanks.
that's a great point. I think what you said right there is, yes, the service level you offer is what moves us away from the commodity level, but also to your point, like that is what makes you different, is if you can provide that service consistently. And I think that's what what I talked about earlier is, yeah, we are providing a service and we are providing it, but were we providing it consistently across the board? Probably not, until we moved into this realm.
Great.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
think it's such a great question. I mean, it's, every car has tires and a steering wheel, right?
Right.
But, there's a different level of service. And I mean, from our outside, vantage point, we've seen Summit do things like, just in terms of how often they're sitting down with the business owner or management team, which I think is very atypical for, quote unquote accounting firm, to actually be a part, to be a voice in management meetings or board meetings. Shows a level of depth they understand about the business, about the industry, a closeness of relationship they have with the business owner that's very atypical. And so, it's not, maybe, certainly the CFO service I think is really important, but there's also just a level of strategic insight and real trust that I think Summit's been able to develop with their clients that allows them to position themselves as kind of a Ferrari perspective in the marketplace. It's not necessarily adding, 50 more services. I think they added, a handful and did extremely well at the execution of it.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. So, but what you don't want to do is build a car that you think will solve everybody's problem that nobody's wants, right? Which is the ego, right? It kind of works, it kind of runs, but it's not really fit for everybody. So if you, kind of to Adam and Jamie's point, right? If you can do one thing for one client, but you can't do it for all clients, that inconsistency is really going to stall the momentum of your firm. And the last thing you want to do is just reinvent how to put together a car in the first place, right? Now, I kind of show this up here as kind of a joke, but you don't want to kind of like reinvent what the steering wheel looks like, or, yeah, I'm going to have different size tires and doors and windows. Who needs that, right? You want to standardize the things that are obvious to standardize, that you don't really want to have a lot of creativity with, so you can free yourself up to add that additional perspective, forecasting, strategic financial insight that we have talked about. So just to recap, in other words, to continue to grow, we have to agree that your service isn't just quote unquote just a service. You're providing a product, tax returns, bookkeeping, tax planning, so on and so forth. And when you adopt that mindset, we think there's 3 critical rules to think about as you're running your firm this year and beyond. And this goes a little bit to what Jamie and Adam were just talking about as well. So the first one is there's more than quote unquote one person that can be trained to complete a given task, right? And you might be listening to this webinar and say, well, there's only me and I'm the only person that can do it. So who do I train? Good news for you. It's a Google Doc, right? You put it in a Google Doc, you get it out of your brain, because look, you're not always just going to be you. You might have contractors, you might get part-time people, you might get full-time people. Right. And what I've often seen is that there's ways to cross train. So maybe you do have team members, but they don't have a specific skill set in your lane. This is a great opportunity to provide training to upskill that team member. And it drives great retention for the team member because they get to learn about something incredibly valuable. And it gives you some redundancy in your firm, in your business, in case you ever want to take something like a vacation. Right. So the second one is, you invest in research and development, right? And that process enhancement, if you're running a service that people love, but all of a sudden you get to a client and you're trying to do the same old, it's not working. Let's go into research and development. So I look at that as process enhancement. What can we change? What can we add? What can we eliminate to deliver a better outcome for our clients? And then the third thing is you are ROI driven and invest back in your firm. Now, I know everybody kind of has that mindset here today, or else you wouldn't be on this call, wouldn't be on this webinar, but you would be surprised how many firm owners just love doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? And that's just, you just can't scale your firm by continuing to do the same thing over and over again. Something I admire about Summit CPA is I can jump on a call with them every quarter, every 6 months, every 12 months. There's something new going on in their business. Maybe it's not a big, shiny, bright object new, but they're always looking to optimize. They're always doing, tweaks and adjustments. Jamie's always thinking about, how can I run this meeting better? How can I understand what my team's doing better? How can I coach them better? Always trying to drive feedback loops back into your firm.
I think the important part of that is the feedback. I think the way we try to look at it is anytime we get feedback, we try to say, okay, what happened there? Was it something what did we do wrong, or what went wrong that we can make better? And so I think that's a big part. Is it really is a feedback loop. And so obviously getting feedback is the key part of that. And so we try to get feedback from our clients as frequent as possible, so we can look at it and say, okay, we don't want to ever rest. This is where we are. This is where we're always going to be. We're always looking at ways to do things better because of that feedback.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite examples I talk about all the time, Jamie, is your Jeopardy countdown Monday morning, meeting. And I don't know if you want to talk about that briefly, but the reason I highlight that is because, it's not this giant new software package, or it's not buying a new firm, or even a new service, but it made such a big difference. Do you want to talk about a little bit of what you're doing? Sure. It was a fun idea. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, so early on when we started using Jetpack, as actually Adam and I were having a conversation, we were always tracking the number of overdue jobs, and it was really important to get that number low. And for a while there, we just couldn't get below a certain threshold. And Adam and I were talking about it, and he said, if we were in an office, Jamie, right now, what I would tell you to do is just go stand over Tom's shoulder and say, I need you to clear Jetpack jobs right now. I need you just to do it, and I'm going to watch you do it. Obviously, we can't do that in the virtual environment. So the idea we came up with is that the beginning of every one of our senior meetings, we spend 5 minutes, and I just sit there and refresh the Jetpack page, and we play Jeopardy music and make it so people know that it needs to be done, and we make sure that those jobs are going down and down and down, so that way we hit our goals each week. And again, it's not that I want them just to close jobs and make sure things are going away. I want them to take the time to think about it and really think, okay, does this job due next week? Does this job have a different due date than I originally thought? But we want to give them that time to do it, where we're all sitting in a room, and like I said, it's a little annoying with the Jeopardy music sometimes, or just me harassing them all the time about it and asking questions, but it makes it way more effective. And so that's one of the changes we did make, because it was a problem we saw out there, that the Jetpack jobs just kept going up.
That's cool.
Well,
and there's a little bit of peer pressure, right? If my name fills that whole screen of past due, there's some peer pressure.
Yeah, exactly.
But the point is, I guess, was my frustration is there's no such thing as a past due job at that point. The point isn't to just grade the paper and go, oops, I missed 3 out of 10. It was the purpose of Jetpack was to make sure that you were organized and you got stuff done this week. So it was either I did it and I checked it off, or I'm doing it this week or next week and it gets moved forward, was kind of the reality of it. So yeah, it was kind of, we were just always, a little perplexed by why we would ever have any overdue jobs at that point, other than people just not maintaining it. We wanted that to create that habit for people. So
yeah, and I love that example so much, because it's seemingly quote unquote small, right? So you have the Jeopardy music playing, it's fun, it drives a culture of accountability, and it could have an incredible impact for your firm. So when I talk about research and development, or being ROI driven, that could be adding a meeting, optimizing an existing meeting or cadence. It could be something, quote unquote, as seemingly small as that, but it can have a really big impact at scale. Actually another example on that, we worked with another firm owner, Orrin Wilson, and he saw a 20% increase in his profit, and his secret, profit boost feature, essentially, was every quarter he would look at done versus due. When did we complete the work? When was it due? If the deadline had significantly passed the due date, or if it had passed at all, he would open up the job and look at all the notes and say, okay, where were people stuck? Where were they confused? What are they not understanding? What are they missing? Right? This seems fairly straightforward, but the fact that he started doing it consistently, he started to see where all the bottlenecks were in his firm, right? Why are we missing all of our month-end closes, right? We promised this to the client. What are we missing? What don't we understand? And he then went back to the system and he updated it. He updated the steps. He added documents. He added things that his team could reference in order to continue to move forward, so they didn't have to pick their heads up and interrupt somebody else to get the question, right? And then you have 2 people that are on the hunt to find something. So these small changes could have a really big impact for your firm. All right, so having said that, Tom, we'll open up the second question before we open up the S.A.T method.
Okay, that's on the screen right now, asking what people are currently using to manage their workflow. So we have about a minute and a half or so where that's going to take up the screen and for people.
Yeah, no judgment either way. We've seen every type of a solution or duct tape in every firm imaginable, right? So you know, go ahead and type in. I think you know, the whole world of, you know, evolving your workflow is a journey, right? Like Jamie and Adam, you said you were using Trello before Jetpack. Maybe before that it was spreadsheets. You know, I don't know. What
We
are all
used
the
Office
solutions you
tools for a while. Yeah, we used Office tools back in the day, probably like mid to early 2000s, and it was man, that was a lot of work. We just weren't a huge fan of like traditional workflows, where every single process had 14 steps to it and would go back and forth. We found that we spent way too much time clicking on checkboxes and then not getting that checkbox to click and send it to Jamie so that he could click it and send it back to me. We were just like, no, we're done with, you know, traditional workflows from that standpoint. And we pretty much burned Office tools, and we're like, nope, we're not doing that again. We just need big ticket tasks, not to micromanage the 14 steps that go within it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You got like 3 seconds left. So if you haven't pushed submit, go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'll go ahead and share the results for this one. And so you can see for the majority, and you could select more than one, but most people are in that spreadsheet, manual, list, or calendar category with sort of workflow solution, other, next, and then nothing as our last one. Okay, so we're back to your slide now, David.
All right. Okay, I'm going to open back up my slide. Just confirming you can see question 2.
Yeah, does that surprise you at all with spreadsheets, manual, list, and calendar? I was guessing that would probably be the top one, but
it really doesn't. And I think, you know, Jamie and Adam's story is also really illustrative of, I think, a very important point. I mean, you know, this is an evolutionary process. You know, you start with one kind of tool or system, whether it's something as robust as like an Office tools, or it's something as, you know, straightforward as a spreadsheet. But we still see that, you know, a lot. And I think, you know, one of the primary reasons we see that is because of what the guys were just talking about. It's sometimes in these legacy applications, you know, no disrespect to anybody, sometimes it's so challenging to get set up. You need something just to get it out of your brain, just to get organized. And you know, buying enterprise or legacy systems it could just be too much to really simply manage a firm. And that could be legacy systems. You know, just for lack of a better word, for fun, I was opening up pretty much every task management tool. You know, there's a lot of really cool ones in the market. I said, you know what, I'm just going to set up an accounting firm in one of these tools. I mean, it was complicated, right? Because there's so much you can do, right? And so I think, yeah, at the end of the day, it always comes back to spreadsheets and calendars, because it's at least good enough to keep going. So
good. Your version of just for fun is probably different than my version of just for fun. Right? Right.
It's okay. True.
Yeah,
well, that's us. We're software geeks. That's what we do. All right, so let's dive into the S.A.T method. You know, you're experiencing some of these challenges. So here are some frameworks and some questions to think about how to move beyond where you're currently at. So the S in S.A.T is standardize. You know, do you have a documented set of steps for your major services and workflows, right? For onboarding new clients, for your returns, your month-end closes, bookkeeping, payroll. You know, I think the goal here is just to start with something. Just get it out of your brain. And if that sounds really intimidating, or, I mean, goodness, you know, if you're in a busy period for your firm, you know, we have 32 spreadsheet templates. If you want to see what those look like, we'll just send them to you. You know, they're free. Email sales@jetpackworkflow.com and just ask for the 32 spreadsheet templates. And you'll see what we mean by standardize. It's just listing out, here are the 7 to 12 steps it takes to, you know, do a month-end close. Here's our target turnaround time. Here's the budgeted time. And we're going to follow this step every single month. And if you haven't done this, you know, I would recommend just carving out, you know, a few hours in a morning or evening or whenever you work best, and just jot down one. Just jot down one. You know, you don't have to jot down everything, but just get the major one down on paper just to start the momentum. You need to start getting things out of your brain and into some sort of system that other people can view, right? So if we have time, I don't think we will. We'll open up Jetpack, but this is what I mean. You know, just something where you can see, hey, here's the name of the service, here's the due date, here's how often it reoccurs, right? Budgeted, time, turnaround time, and here's all the individual steps, right? You can add reference material, links, documents, but you know that here are the steps somebody needs to take to complete the service. Again, the goal is to get it out of your brain, because I'll warn everybody here, if you keep it in your brain and then you start hiring people, something really bad will happen. I'm gonna tell you what it is. People will start to become used to coming to you for the answer, because the answer is always in your brain, right? So like vacations, forget about it. Weekends, forget about it. Evenings off, forget about it, because your team is starting to become very accustomed to always coming to you for the answer. So you do want to get this, if you're thinking about hiring, if you're thinking about scaling up, start getting things out of your brain so that you could point your team to a centralized solution, so you don't create the muscle or the nerve in your organization for them to come to you. All right, so that's a brief look at what I mean. And when you do this, we've seen firm owners say, hey, finally nothing falls through the cracks. Why does nothing fall through the cracks? It's documented step by step, and you can go through it. All right, so S is for standardize in the S.A.T method. A is about automation and delegation. So what do I mean by that? Well, what I mean by that is you either delegate the work to team members, or you automate it, most likely through bringing in software to do things like obviously manage recurring deadlines and due dates. I mean, that's the bread and butter of Jetpack Workflow. Data entry, right? There's so many integrations. There's so many tools that can help you pass data between other tools. Month-end closes. Scheduling, right? If you're still doing, what time is good for you? Oh, I don't know. Send me a couple of times. Oh, those actually don't work. Now I got to be out early. You can adopt a tool like Acuity Scheduling, like Schedule Once, like Calendly. Everybody has these kind of like scheduling tools available. Again, they seem small, but think of how many emails you're going back and forth with. Managing recurring deadlines. It feels simple to copy and paste deadlines until you have a team of 5 and you have 5,000 deadlines to copy and paste every year. All of these things start to add up where you start becoming dramatically less efficient with your time. So as soon as you start to get things standardized, like in the first step, start to think about what you might be able to delegate or automate. And I'll give you one quick story. I know we're going to be butting up against here on time here, but there was a firm owner we're working with. They were in the 12 to 15 person range that Adam was talking about. And he was burned out, and he didn't want to sell his firm, but he got an offer for his firm. And he goes, yeah, you know what? I might just take it. I'm just tired. I'm exhausted. I started talking with him. I said, what's going on? Walk me through your typical week. And what we both realized pretty quickly is, one, he was still answering all the incoming calls for the firm because he just thought he was supposed to do it. It's like, okay, well, let's get a part-time person to maybe answer the phones. He clearly had enough money, but he just felt this responsibility to keep doing it. And the second thing is, there are a handful of clients that he felt nobody else could really take on. And we started exploring that, and we realized there were some senior team members in his firm that could be trained up to take on those clients. If they, took a quarter or two to train them up. He did that, so he brought in and he thought about his process. He delegated out the phone triage. He trained up a team member to delegate some of the higher end client work. Client satisfaction improved because at 12, 15 people, the owner's not getting back to the clients the fastest. It's just not going to happen, right? So he started thinking about the steps he could start to delegate. He decided to not sell his firm. It's since nearly doubled, and he's loving his firm again, right? So that's the power of automation or delegation, right? What this quickly looks like in Jetpack is, this is a quick look at a sample client list. Grab your client list, take your standardized template, roll it out to them, right? I talked about data entry. There's a tool called Zapier, which allows you to connect over 2,000 applications together. So if you ever had a dream of, Jetpack Workflow, talking with Microsoft platform, talking with QuickBooks Connect or QBO or Xero, there's tools out there now that can help you stream data between all these different applications. So no more copy paste between data cells. That's the dream of Zapier. And that's just 2 quick examples of what it looks like. And then finally, what Jackie said is, once you set up something that's reoccurring, it's automated or delegated, sanity. I don't know how you can measure sanity, but people are talking about the freak out moment. There's a lot of sanity just saying, look, it's there. I know it's there. I know it's going to show up. I know people are going to see it. If it starts falling behind, I'm going to see it. I'm going to be able to follow up with people. Don't have to worry about things, right? I don't know the ROI on sanity, but I think it's pretty good, right?
My one quick example for that, David, I just got an email yesterday that a once every 2-year report was due with Washington, D.C. for a client. And I vaguely remember doing that, but Glance and Jetpack, and I was smart enough 2 years ago to say, here's how you do that. And it was great to say, okay, my senior now knows how to do that because I put step by step 2 years, but it's a great place because it's really hard to remember a deadline 2 years in the future. So
oh my goodness, yeah. That's an amazing example, right? You set it up and I mean, look, the reason you set it up is because you will absolutely forget.
Right.
You will absolutely forget if you don't set it up, right? And you know, I love spreadsheets as much as the next person, but what's the downfall of spreadsheets? Not everybody can typically see it. You can't filter or search or track. You can't get, I mean, it's something as simple as an email reminder. You don't see it on your dashboard. It doesn't automatically reoccur. Yeah. So, you know, you just kind of, I hate to say it this way, but set it and forget it, right? It was like the old infomercial. And I just love that example. So I think it's really important when you're setting up any tool, but especially Jetpack Workflow, get everything into the system, especially the things that are yearly or goodness every 2 years, because there's zero chance you're going to remember them.
Right. And I didn't mention there's probably a good chance that 2 years ago that wouldn't have been my client anymore. There could have been transition. And so now someone else is coming in who's saying, what the heck is this?
Yeah, the client retention aspect is critical. You know, what is one more year of some of your best clients worth? Like just adding that deadline, right? The PPP deadline, following up with your clients around that. You know, in Pennsylvania, we have these R&D tax credits. You have to file for them in certain times. Okay, remind your clients, come August, make sure you file it. You just want just those small things. What is that going to double your client retention, triple? You know, instead of them leaving after 2 years, they're there for 10 because they feel like they can count on you. So
yeah, clients expect us to be proactive about stuff like that. And so I think that's the great thing about the example Tom's giving is that type of stuff prior to Jetpack would have been like the client would have reminded us, oh yeah, by the way, don't forget we have this filing. Like, okay, yeah, we'll get to it. Then we try to figure out how to do it. And it just would have been a very inconsistent process. And I think now to Tom's point, like he probably came to the client first and was like, oh yeah, don't worry, we're working on this. We got it started already. We know it's due on this day. And just being proactive with clients is very important.
Yep.
Yeah, every time you send a proactive message, I feel like that's like a deposit into the relationship, right? It's just one more example of why they need you so much, because the thing we're talking about, you know, Jetpack might do for you all is, I mean, you're doing that for your clients. You're remembering these deadlines so they don't have to. So they don't have to set their own calendar reminders or set their own deadline, or heaven forbid, they miss the deadline and come to you asking, hey, what happened? You know, we missed a certain tax advantage or tax credit. We got into a cash crunch. We didn't realize it. You know, what happened? So I think every time you send a proactive message, just to let you know, this deadline's coming up. We're going to be reviewing A, B, and C. We'll follow up with more questions. That's just another deposit on why they are going to need you as an advisor long term. Awesome. Well, the final one in the S.A.T method is track. I think it's everybody's favorite. And so this is all about having visibility over what are the due dates? What is your team working on? What has your team completed? What questions does your team have about the client work? Do you have capacity? Are you making money? Right? And we'll talk about some key questions around track, but I think these are some of the really big ones. And I will say this, for a lot of the first-time managers on today's call or watching it through the video, if you ever find yourself stuck, you're like, I don't know what to track. I don't know what questions to ask. We found 3 really simple questions that if you ever feel stuck, just say, do I know what's due? Do I know what's been done? And do I know what's upcoming? And if you feel good about the answers to that, you're probably doing an overall pretty good job of managing everything. If you have less certainty about one of those 3, that's probably where I would start investigating how to add more tracking capabilities there. Now, what this looks like in Jetpack.
I was gonna say, I think it's funny you mentioned the first-time managers, because that's one of the things that I think Jetpack has been key for us is really training people in their first time supervising someone. You know, it's okay, use Jetpack as a tool to supervise them. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, just pop open the open Jetpack jobs and talk through them one by one and see what the timelines are. The timelines correct? Are the tasks in there correct? And that really helps you become an effective manager, because you are looking through everything that's due that week or maybe due that day, and you're making sure that it's going to get done, and you're assigning it, and you're talking about it, and you're talking about, okay, actually that's that's not as important as this other task. Let's push it back 2 days. You know, it really helps you have those conversations with a guided methodology that not all seniors or not all people that are supervising have been through before. So I really appreciated that tool for that aspect.
Yeah, that's such a great example. You know, I think for two reasons. Obviously, we love the Jetpack call out. By the way, for everybody's watching, this is the Jetpack job. This is our core job screen that Jamie was talking about, where you can search for any job, search for any client, run a bunch of different filters, and pull up the exact view to answer questions you might have about your firm. But what I also love about that example is it reinforces we're using Jetpack, we're using this tool. You know, and I think if you don't have something that's, you know, in your firm that you've agreed upon as the source of record, where you're going to track all the deadlines and due dates, everybody's going to come with their own notebook and spreadsheet, and it's really hard to coach them through what they're working on. But if you have everything in a system and you're opening up during your one-on-ones, it does reinforce, hey, this is important. We do use this platform. We do rely on it, and it's going to help us work together more efficiently. So I love that you actually open it up during your meetings. I think it's a great way, and just talk through where people are stuck. You can add notes or reference material. So I love that example. So this is a look at the jobs tab. This is also a look at the done versus due date. We've actually, you know, since added a report that's literally just called the done report. It'll show you what percentage of work is getting done on time. It'll show you budget via actual. It'll show you which team members have completed what. But even at a high level, you can open up your jobs view and say, okay, let's pull everything that's been done last month, and let's take a look at every time the completion date, the done date, passed the due date, right? And figure out what's going on, what are we missing, right? And so when I talked about that Orrin Wilson example earlier, this is essentially what he would do. He would run this and say, how did last month go? How did last quarter go? And he would look for trends, you know, because in our tool, you can search by services or by clients or team members. And so you could slice it a couple of different ways, and you could say, wow, all of our month-end closes, we keep missing the deadline, right? We promise our clients this is when it gets closed out. We're missing it by a week. What's going on?
So we have about 5 minutes left. So I want to go ahead and launch the next polling question.
Sure thing. Yep.
And then if you can. Okay. Yep. Go ahead. It's been launched.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So yeah, it's right there on the screen. So having said that, we're about to do a quick recap of the S.A.T method, and then we'll end today's CPE in just a couple minutes. But yeah, I'm curious for everybody as they think about 2021 and beyond. What is your hiring plan for the next 12 months? So go ahead and type in the chat right now. I'm curious from Summit CPA's end, what are you all experiencing? What are you all planning for the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I think we'll probably be in the 10 to 30% area is pretty much what we're targeting our trajectory this year at. So not quite over the 30%, but you know, as the numbers get bigger, it's harder to hit those bigger percentage growths as well. So still pretty healthy growth. We've been able to grow a little more than 20% year over year every year for quite some time now. So pretty steady, consistent growth.
And Adam, that number feels a little bit less scary knowing that we've got some of the workflow and processes and standardization in place, right? It's adding people and finding them, but we're not also saying, and we're not really sure how work gets done, and we've got to figure that out.
Yeah, I mean, and just, you know, some of the feedback that we got originally whenever we started with Jetpack, and we hadn't had the full transition over, and I know that I was pushing Jamie a lot to kind of find out if we're doing a good job with it. We would have new team members come aboard, and they would of course get some clients, they would inherit some that had the Jetpack already set up, and then others where we hadn't got to that stage yet. Mm-hmm. And in every review that we had with the new team members in that first 90 days, they just said it's night and day difference starting on a client that had the Jetpack set up versus one that didn't. They said it was, so that's why we moved forward and pushed ahead as fast as we could with getting that implemented for all of our clients.
Yep. So half the people set up to 10% growth. And then about a third of the people said no hires were they expecting. So that was a result of that poll.
Awesome. Well, I know we're going to be bumping up against the hour, so I'll do a quick recap of the S.A.T method. And then for folks that are kind of interested in exploring Jetpack, again, we didn't have much of a time to open it today, but we'll tell you if you want to explore further how to do that. But a quick recap of the S.A.T method. The first thing is, like I said, standardize, standardize, standardize. And so If you feel like you've become kind of a firefighter in your firm, right, and all these kind of little things going on, everything's being missed or dropped, I would take a look at the standardized bucket, right? And I would look at the major services. A, automate and delegate, right? If you're experiencing burnout, it's probably because you have delegation or automation challenges here, right? And so I would look at the admin tasks that you've taken on, whether it's calendar scheduling, tracking deadlines or due dates, and I would start there. The final thing is track. And the problem here is if you have anxiety, like I have a team, I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know if they're doing it the right way. Think about what's due, what's done, and what's upcoming. And I think if you're able to do this, you know, again, what do? Standardize, build out your templates, build out your workflow library. Again, if you want examples, email sales@jetpackworkflow.com. We'll send you 32 examples of what you can do. You know, automate, what's ways to overcome that? Think about the tools you have applied to your firm or the team that you have and what you might be able to delegate out. And then finally, track. And the tactic here is all about reports. Do you have the right views to see what's due, what's done, and what's upcoming? All right, well, I know we only have a couple minutes left. We just went through question 3. So I'll zip through these final slides and just go to kind of one of the punchlines, which is if you want to explore Jetpack Workflow, if you feel like we talked about some things today that are interesting, that you are going through, that you feel like based on what we've talked about or what Jamie or Adam said could benefit your firm, I think the best way to always explore Jetpack Workflow is to just go to this demo link. You can book, you know, a half hour with somebody on our team, up to an hour, and it's start.jetpackworkflow.com/demo. Now, we did set up something kind of special. If you book a demo from today's CPE, we'll ship you a copy of our book. So I mentioned earlier, you know, we have this book. It's 200 or so pages long. Best practices after 100+ interviews, you know, thousands of hours of talking with firm owners on what's working. We put it into a book. So if you book a demo as a thank you for, you know, investing in your workflow journey, we'll just ship you this book for free. So if you do that, it's limited to 20 copies. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and sign up on the link. And I want to thank, you know, the Summit folks for inviting me on. I hope everybody got a lot from today's journey. If you do have questions for me personally, if something I said really resonated with you or you want us to expand on it, my personal email is david@jetpackworkflow.com. So having said that, thank you guys for inviting us on. I hope everybody got a lot from today's webinar. If you want to say thank you, the number one way you could say thank you is type into the chat or comments the number one takeaway you got from today. So having said that, Tom, Jamie, Adam, thanks again for inviting us on, and I'll pass it over to you all.
Yep, if you'll jump to the next slide, we have a couple of offers as well. There you go. So there is a modern CPA success show, so a great chance to hear from some individual speakers that we have that Jamie hosts this, and we have lots of people on from clients to employees to different partners that we work with. So a really good way to continue listening. If you want to be more interactive, and we hope that you do, we have a Slack community, the CFO community. There's a book club, a marketing group. People also just come out and ask questions. We saw for today a lot of people were small firms, and one of the challenges with that can be where do you get some kind of benchmark information from other firms. This is a great way to see that with more than 100 people as part of the Slack channel. If you jump to the next, sorry, go ahead, Jimmy.
We're all on there too. You know, I've done a couple of personal conversations with some of the people in that community about Jetpack and walked them through kind of how we use it as well. So if you're in that community, you know, feel free to reach out to us. We can talk to you there too as well.
Good. We talked about the virtual CFO services that Summit offers, and we're really excited to be offering this course, the whole CFO playbook, how to land $60,000 per year clients and provide a killer experience. So comes with a 15 module series. With the completion of that is a free coaching session with Adam and I. We also have weekly meetings with other CPAs who are sitting around talking about these kinds of topics. Subscription to the community that I mentioned, a book, and then also discounts. So something that a lot of people are taking advantage of that we are really excited about. And then finally, I think you'll see the speakers that we have for today on that last slide and how to get in contact with people. So if you want to jump to that very last slide. David, thank you very much. I know you gave some kind of, hey, there's one option that you can get to it this way, or there's a second option. Those slides are included in the packet that people will get. So if you want to go through and read those, you certainly can. But thank you very much for the time you had today for us, and I hope that people will follow up and want to see that demo on Jetpack.
Yeah,
great. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us.